Again, I thank you, Kevin, for coming.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
This edition of Teed Up Grand Strand is brought to you by the Zeus Digital Broadcasting Network for thegolfdirector.com.
If you're looking to play some golf in the Myrtle Beach area, just call Dave at the Golf Director, 844-GO-GOLF-1. That's 844-464-6531. Just call Dave. Dave can get you on the course with the best rates on the Grand Strand. Just call Dave. If you're a little shy and you don't like talking on the phone, just chat with Dave. Go to thegolfdirector.com in the lower right-hand corner, click chat. In a few seconds, you're going to be chatting live with Dave. Dave has some of the best golf packages offered anywhere. Just call Dave. 844-GO-GOLF-1. That's 844-464-6531. Tell your friends to tweet at the Golf Director. Hashtag just call Dave. 844-GO-GOLF-1. Just call Dave at the Golf Director.
Tee it up. Where we gonna hit 'em today? Tee it up. Got my sticks and I'm on my way. I got
Radio Network.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of The Rules of Golf with Martin.
Good
How are
morning,
you doing
everyone.
this morning?
I'm doing great.
Good. So, of course, we have with us Martin Woodhouse, and we are going to talk a little bit more about principles behind the rules of golf, right?
That's what I want to do. Yep.
All right. Well, this is an ongoing series, but we also know that there's folks who may be listening who haven't heard the previous one, so I'm going to catch everyone up to speed real quick.
Sure.
If you are listening, especially on an app, you can go to thegolfdirector.com and click on the radio tab to look for all these great shows. And then if you are on thegolfdirector.com and you'd like to see us, you can click on the TV tab and get to see the video, and we welcome you to do that. So now that, and this series is about, the technical rules of golf, but like we said last week, we understand the rules can change depending on the format. Or this isn't meant to be a you must stick by the rules at all costs, because golf is
Right.
meant to be fun.
Sure.
But there are those instances where, in tournament play that we've got to get it right. So we're excited that you're doing this series with us, and look forward to hearing what you have to say. Give everyone a little background on your credentials and what makes you an expert in this field.
Well, I've been a PGA professional for 30-some years. 1981, I've qualified as a PGA professional. So I've obviously played all my life, and I got interested in the rules early on. Of course, as a professional, you need to play by the rules. And as I said last week, a lot of people, they're just going out and having fun and playing and all that kind of thing. So, and that's fine. But what I wanted to try and do in the series that we're doing is to not only pass on the knowledge for the rules of golf, but also to make people understand why they are the way they are. And I talked last time a little bit, introduced the listeners to Richard Tufts, who wrote the book,
Yes.
The Principles Behind the Rules of Golf. And we talked about the two great principles. And really, golf is a very complicated game, but when you break it down, it's really very simple. I mean, if you look at the very first rule in the book, I mean, it really makes it very, very simple. The rule says, it's Rule 1-1. The game of golf consists of playing a ball with a club from the teeing ground into the hole by a stroke, if you're lucky, or successive strokes in accordance with the rules. I mean, that's what the game is. It's very simple. However, of course, because of the conditions that we run across and the different courses and so forth, it's not always possible to do that.
Yeah, and I loved what you said that, essentially there's two underlying rules or principles.
Great
and
principles, yeah.
that big book was written to take care of all the exceptions to those rules.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I mean, I've got a couple of books here. This is the
Right.
rules book. I mean, everybody should have one of these.
They should.
And that was one of the things I said last week. People, they try and read it, and it's really not it's not a good way to read it, sort of cover to cover. And it is kind of hard to understand if you don't know your definitions, because people skip over these definitions and they don't they think they know what they mean, but they don't. And as I said last week, when you're reading the book, all of the terms that you see in italics are definitions.
That's right. And I
So-
didn't know that. I don't think a lot of people knew that.
And you can really answer a lot of situations you run across and questions that you have just by not getting into the rules too deeply, but looking at the definition. It'll tell you, and it should explain why that it is the way it is. So I've got my rules book here. I've got my decisions book here,
Which is even bigger.
This is the big one. And that really just kind of gives you examples of the various things. And the other book, which I said is, I believe it's really essential reading for anybody who's interested in being more proficient in the rules. I was just talking with Jeff, and he said it's something that he's really interested in. And Jeff, this is a book you got to read, man. It's not very big, and it explains why things happen. I'm going to try and maybe give you a couple of examples of things. And it's funny, we talk about things. Oftentimes they'll come up.
Always.
you know.
Yes, always. I don't know
had
why.
this happen this past weekend, and it's. I don't think a weekend goes by that I don't get a call from a graduate, former student who are running a tournament, and they've got a rule situation, and they call me and to figure it out.
Yes, and let's remind everyone, because you teach this. You don't only do
I
it as
do.
a professional, but you teach this at the Golf
I
Academy.
do. Yeah, I've been with the Golf Academy over 10 years now, over 11 actually. And I did start at the Golf Academy teaching the rules of golf, and I still do. I also teach tournament planning, tournament administration. Of course, administering tournaments, a big part of that is rules.
Absolutely.
Of
And the best tournaments are the ones that have someone there who really knows, because it seems like that
Yeah.
keeps the confusion and people getting upset to a minimum.
Yeah, it really does. And of course, that's the whole basis of knowing the rules is, I say with casual play, do what you want. That's fine. But I think most golfers, they want to test themselves. They want to know how good they are in two ways. Number one, competing against other people. Am I better than these other people? And also, how well you play according to the rules. I mean, there's not a lot of satisfaction going out shooting what you think is a good score, and then, it was a good score, but I rolled the ball a couple of times and I dropped one here, and you really want to know what would it really have been.
Right.
And
'cause-
I don't think anybody, myself included, I'm sure you too, has ever walked off the golf course after a good round and said, That's as good as it gets. It doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen.
It
no.
doesn't.
Never.
There's always something. Yeah, I could have saved a shot there. Could have saved a shot there. And again, one of the great things about the game is, the integrity of it.
Right.
And I just wanted to share a story as well. This happened this past weekend. As I told you last week, I was in Germany a long time. I had a young student that I started at the age of 10, actually.
Wow.
He's now 25. I had his European Tour card for a short while. He's now on the Challenge Tour, which
Okay,
is the
yeah.
equivalent of the web.com. And I stay in contact with him, and he was disqualified last week in a tournament. And I spoke to him, and just to kind of put it in perspective as to the significance of this, he was in 41st position in the order of merit. The top 45 go to the Tour Series, which is an opportunity to win
Yeah.
your tour card for the European Tour. So, the fact that he got disqualified could have put him out of the top 45. Fortunately, it didn't.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
And what had happened was they were playing in Italy, and the weather conditions were bad, and they were playing lift, clean, and place. And the rule about lift, clean, and place is when your ball is in a closely mown area, which is defined as being cut to fairway height or less, you can mark it, clean it, and replace it within a specified area, no nearer the hole. The purpose, of course, is so the ball's not dirty. So they were playing lift, clean, and place, and he was playing the second day, and one of his fellow competitors, people he was playing with, he said, I think this is closely mown area. I'm not sure. It was fairly close to the green. There was a short area of apron, and then it was cut a little bit higher. And he was in that area, and he said, I think this is lift, clean, and place. And the players agreed, I'm sure it is. He said, I just want to be sure, and called over a rules official, which is the smart thing to do.
Right.
And the rules official said, no, that's higher. That's not closely mown. You don't get the free drop. And at this point, my student, former student, said to the rules official, well, I was in a similar situation yesterday. Now, this was with another group.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody would have known anything if he hadn't said. He said, I was in a similar situation. I think I might have
Okay.
have moved it in the wrong place. Would you go take a look at this particular spot? And he did. He said, I'm sorry, that was not lift, clean, place. I said, well, I did.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've signed my card, and that's it.
That was it.
That was it.
Mm.
Which just shows integrity,
Well, it does, and we speak about this, especially with the World Am tournament that's here in Myrtle Beach, and that's always a big rules debacle, if you will, because some people are always getting disqualified for just random things. But a point you brought up last week was I think excellent. When you're playing match play, you're only concerned about the person that's in your group, which y'all are watching each other.
Sure.
This is to make sure it's fair when you're playing stroke play, because everyone needs to be playing by the same rules,
of course,
so that you're competing appropriately. Yeah. And that's a great example. And I love the honesty. I feel horrible for him, but it happens on the we hear about it on the tour.
You know how karma and all these things. I was just looking this morning. He last week he finished 5th.
Okay.
The following week, which got him into the next round, and this week he's now lying in 3rd place. He's playing in China this week.
Okay.
And he shot 66, 69 to finish in 3rd place. So
nice.
Bernd, stolz auf dich, weiter so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever he said. Absolutely. So you said you had some examples from the book we've been talking about, or some things that I'm going to put this a little closer to you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So tell what have you got for us out of the book today?
Okay. Well, we're just talking about that, about penalties and so forth, and disqualification penalties. I think that's one of the areas where golfers have a real hard time understanding the rules. They think they're unfair, and they think the penalties are not appropriate. Well, why should that be a penalty, and why would he do that? He didn't get any advantage, those types of things. And Tufts addresses that in his book. The section is called, I like the way he writes, it's called When We Do Wrong.
Wait, this sounds like it maybe more life lesson than golf lesson.
well, they do say, don't they, that golf parallels life. I think it does in a lot of ways. So what Tufts has to say about the penalties are, nobody wants to incur a penalty, but there are so many rules that they're often a factor in the results of play. Generally speaking, there are 4 kinds of penalties. Firstly, those that come as a result of play, such as playing a ball out of bounds, in stroke play, striking another ball on the putting green, and so on. Secondly, those which are the result of accidental acts by the player, such as moving the ball at address. Then we've got the third kind of penalty, which is the result of purposeful acts by the player, such as lifting a ball in play before holing out, improving the lie of the ball, etc. And here he goes on to say, it should be noted that even purposeful acts are usually inadvertent or done in ignorance of the rules. As I said, golfers tend not to purposely cheat. in my experience.
Some of them.
Some of them.
We
And
can be
then-
honest here. Some of them.
Well, that's true too.
We like to give them the benefit of the doubt, though.
And then fourthly, those which come as from a failure to proceed in accordance with the rules, such as putting a ball into play incorrectly, delaying play, and so on. And he says that the deliberate violation of rules is a rare occurrence and an interesting demonstration of the high moral game on which the high moral plane on which the game is universally played. So that's that. Tufts doesn't like the word penalty because it implies wrongdoing and punishment, and that's not really what it is at all. He prefers the term adjustment.
Okay,
adjustment.
adjustment.
Yeah. So
So we're going to make an adjustment to your score
Well,
based
that's-
on what happened.
Exactly
Okay.
right. Exactly right. And this is the important part to understand here. The penalty or adjustment must not be less than the advantage that the player could have derived from a particular rule violation. It will be impossible to make a penalty for every single situation, so we've got to kind of make we call it a general penalty, is 2 strokes. In other words, whether the violation is inadvertent or deliberate, whether it occurred as a result of play or due to accidental or purposeful act by the player, or whatever reason it comes about, the penalty must always be of sufficient magnitude to discourage the player from seeking or receiving an advantage under the rules. Let's say, for example, the penalty for playing from a wrong place is 2 strokes. So if I fit my ball in the fairway or not, and I pick it up and put it in my pocket and walk up to the green and drop it on the green, and you say, well, what are you doing? You're playing from a wrong place. I say, well, yeah, I know I am. I'm just going to take the 2-stroke penalty, and I'll be putting for a par.
Oh, there
So,
you go.
so what I'm doing there is I'm using the penalty
As an advantage.
as an advantage, and of course, that's not going to work. We can't do that. So that's the purpose of the rule. So the purpose is to ensure that, as far as possible, everyone plays the same game. The penalties serve to police the chance that by taking advantage of an inadequately protected rule, players will play a game wholly different from golf. The penalties must be adequate to provide this protection. For if they're too light, you could try and gain an advantage by just taking the penalty, which is what I said. And then, in order to maintain the principle, it must be admitted that at times the penalties appear to be unduly severe. And as I said, it's impossible to provide a completely graduated scale of penalties, though the rules do permit modifying a penalty under Rule 33.7. So it must be it must be adequate to offset the maximum advantage the player is likely to receive. The penalties cannot be expected, nor are they intended to exactly offset the advantage gained from the violation. And there are so many examples of that where people say, well, that was crazy. Why was that an advantage? Why did he get penalized? I say there's so many examples. I'll just give to give you one. Let's say, this came up in discussion a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you remember this. It was a long time ago. The Craig Stadler thing, where he kneeled on his towel. Jeff, you remember that one?
Yes, I know. I remember.
Yeah,
I
it
remember
was.
when that happened, yeah.
Yeah, it was 1993. David Russell was the rules official. It was one of his first rulings. And what had happened, for those of you who don't remember that, ball was under a bush, and Stadler wanted to play it, but he had to kneel on the ground to play it.
He had on expensive pants.
He had on expensive pants, so he put down a towel to stop him getting his pants dirty. And the penalty for that was 2 strokes. The penalty was for building a stance. Building a stance. That means he raised himself off the ground. By this much. By
millimeters. If that.
Really.
Yeah.
So was it an advantage? Obviously not. There really wasn't an advantage. But the question you've got to ask yourself is not, did he gain an advantage in this situation? The question you got to ask is, could it be in any way advantageous to raise yourself off the ground sometimes? And the answer is obviously yes. I mean, if you've got a ball up in a tree and you stand on the roof of the golf cart
Yeah,
to hit it, you've built a stance.
absolutely.
So this thing about a graduated penalty, if you say, well, okay, well, clearly a few millimeters, we're not going to worry about that.
Right.
Well, the question is, well, where do we start worrying about it? Is it going to be an inch, or is it a foot or 2 feet? You can't have that graduated scale. So anytime you build a stance, whether it's this much or this much,
Well,
it's the same penalty.
Yeah, and I would argue there's a mental advantage, right? I mean, since he was no longer worried. I mean, we often are standing in
Well-
areas that we're a little worried about, and by his knee not getting wet or whatever,
Yeah.
it wasn't distracting. But that's not really fair because sometimes you're standing in areas that are distracting when
Yeah.
you're standing up on 2 feet. So,
Sure.
but yeah, that was talked about, and it's still
Well,
being talked
still
about,
being talked
obviously,
about, of course, yeah.
because of that. But yeah, it's that, where do you
Yeah.
draw the line?
Well, that's exactly right. And it's the same thing as like, I just read Rule 1. And what it says is you've got to start from within the teeing ground. If you tee the ball up 3 inches in front of the teeing ground and don't correct your mistake before you start from the next hole, you're done. You're disqualified because you haven't played the game. And is it an advantage to go two inches ahead of the tee markers? Probably not. But again, where does the advantage begin? So
Right.
you can't graduate it. You've just got to be black and white about it and say you didn't gain an advantage necessarily, but there is the potential to gain the advantage, and that's one of the other principles that Tufts talk about is we treat like situations alike.
I have a question about that as
Yeah.
far as the teeing ground. I understand not teeing in front of the teeing ground,
Right.
but I've seen golfers tee behind the tees.
You know what, Jeff? I had this. This was one of the calls. I had this last weekend.
Really?
I had this call last weekend. What it was, and this is maybe not a good idea on the part of the people who put the tournament together, but they decided on some of the holes they were going to use different tee markers. I think on the longer holes, maybe I'm not sure, but it was clearly indicated on the rule sheet, so everybody should have known which tees they were supposed to be using. And on one particular hole, one of the groups didn't read the rules, and they played from a tee further back, 50 yards further away.
Wow.
And I get the call, well, what's the ruling on that? I said, I'm afraid they're disqualified. And they said, well, I can understand that if it was a closer set of tees, they could have had an advantage. But playing from a further set of tees, they actually hurt themselves. So can we not just give them a penalty or let the score stand? Well, no, because they didn't play the game, did they? They didn't start from the teeing ground. And
So
for those of you who are looking these things up, it's 11-5 is the rule.
So what's the leeway back from the tee to be able to place a ball?
2 club lengths.
2 club lengths max.
2 club lengths,
And-
yeah.
Okay, because often, you get on like a par 3 is where it happens most of the time, and you're kind of in between clubs, or,
Right.
or whatever, and
Or or it's not level where you're standing.
right.
Sure.
That's what.
Yeah.
But okay, that's interesting. So
And 2 club lengths, by the way, when we talk about measuring, so we have some 1 club length, 2 club lengths, no 3s, as far as I'm aware. It's 1 or 2. You can use any club in your bag for that.
okay.
So your driver works.
Now,
Yeah.
if as far as teeing it in front of the teeing ground, I know
Mhm.
this gets a little bit hairy, but I'm imagining that if the ball breaks the plane of that line from tee to tee, that's in front.
It's actually not the plane. The hazards, or rather the lines that extend vertically upwards on the golf course as far as measuring goes, are out of bounds and water hazards.
Oh, he meant on the tee box, I think.
I know.
Oh, okay, got it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's getting there.
Okay.
Those are the only 2 times where we talk about planes, where the
Okay.
margin
Okay.
extends vertically upwards. The margin does not extend vertically upwards for a teeing ground.
Uh-huh.
The teeing ground is the outside edge of the tee markers
Uh-huh.
on the front and that line. And if it is beyond that line, well, it's not within the teeing ground.
Okay, so to
But
get,
all of the ball has to be outside of the teeing ground.
Okay, that's where I was going. Yeah. Okay.
And there's an easy way to remember this, by the way. You know, people get confused with part of the ball. This is a good rule of thumb to remember. If any part of the golf ball is touching the smaller area, it is in that smaller area.
Okay.
So that would apply to the teeing ground. It would apply to the putting green. It would apply to the bunker. It would apply to ground under repair, hazard. Those are all smaller areas than the rest of the golf course.
So if you, okay, every time we speak, I think of another situation.
Okay.
So I'm on the green,
Yes.
and my ball is sitting up against the first cut. I mean
Right.
the cut, the fringe there, but part of the ball is over the fringe.
Right.
So I can play that as if it's on the green.
Well, if any part of the ball is touching the putting green, it's on the putting
It's on
green.
the putting
If
green.
any part of the ball is touching the putting green, it's
Sweet.
on the putting green.
Yeah, there was a stroke I missed.
Doesn't all have to be on there. But again, the margin doesn't overhang. So if it's sitting on that collar and it's part of it's overhanging the green, it's not on the green.
It's got to be touching the
It's got to be
green.
touching the green because remember again that plane does not extend.
Got
upwards.
it.
Only the hazards and the
Water hazards, not
right,
not
water,
bunkers.
not
bunkers.
water hazards.
Water hazards.
Okay.
And out of bounds. Those are the only planes that extend vertically upwards.
All right. Well, I'm so glad that we're getting into this, but gentlemen, we are out of time.
But that's great.
Really?
That
This
is
I
one-
didn't
cool.
even get to talk about
I
my
know we're gonna get to do the. We're gonna do it a little bit quicker. It goes so
That's,
fast,
I
doesn't
that's the
it?
way this show goes,
does,
though, because
yeah.
everything you say triggers a thought
Right.
from some time when you've had that situation occur. And just like me, as I've said before the show, until you have this experience or you study the rules, you don't even realize there's a rule that applies that,
Sure.
that specifically defines what to do there. And I'm sure there are always lots of gray areas where the calls come into play as some sort of a judgment call.
Well, that was the other thing, and just real quick to kind of wrap it up,
Yeah.
I guess. As we said, with the penalties, they don't seem fair because they're not based on advantage. So either there's going to be a graduated set of penalties, which is impractical to do, or we're going to have to make judgment calls, and we don't want to have to do that. We don't have to do that because one rules official might judge something and another
Yep.
one might judge something else,
Yep.
which is why, it does seem unfair sometimes.
All
But it's
right.
equitable.
It is equitable. Well, you know what? When you don't have judgment calls,
Yeah.
it is absolutely equitable. Martin,
Right.
thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
being with us again. And folks, we are going to continue on this line of conversation and get into this little book, which I'm becoming fascinated with as well. I know Jeff is too. But Martin Woodhouse from the Golf Academy of America, right?
That's right.
I want to say it right. Let's
Yeah.
give everyone their web house in case web
That's Woodhouse.
Woodhouse.
It's not Woodsite in Webhouse.
Not Woodside. Let's give everyone their website so that if they'd like more information on the Golf Academy, they can find it.
Golfacademy.edu
There you go, golfacademy.edu.
or .com actually.
.com.
Or probably both.
Both. I think
Probably
both probably get you there.
Golfacademy.com.
Yes, and check us out on thegolfdirector.com for your information on all things golf. You can also click on our community site and put in comments and ask us questions. And we would love to have some questions for Martin for the shows coming up. The show airs every Friday live at 8:30, and then it'll be in the replay loop several other times during the week. So we're excited about that, and we'll see you next Friday.
Look forward to it.
This edition of The Rules of Golf have been produced and broadcast by the Zeus Radio Network for thegolfdirector.com. All right, we're clear.
That did go fast.
It goes so fast, 30 minutes.